Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Reflections webinar. My name's Darren Lamb and I'm the Head of Maths here at GL Assessment. I'm going to be chairing the session today, just keeping an eye on the chat box for any questions you may have as we go along. Before we start, if anyone has any problems hearing, could you just drop us a message in the Q&A and we'll try and help with any issues you've got. Don't worry if we can't get this resolved. The session is going to be recorded and it will be available on our website in a few days' time, and you'll get an email as well. Please ask any questions you have throughout the session via the chat, and we'll have time at the end to cover those as much as possible. So today's session, we're going to focus on the potential impact of COVID upon the return to school in terms of emotional well-being and the bearing this plays on achievement. I'm delighted to have Alexandra Pulfer here this afternoon to talk through her experiences there. She's going to explain how her trust has used PASS this autumn to help identify those students most at risk. She's going to discuss how the information generated by PASS can be the stimulus for professional discussions with class teachers, senior leaders, external agencies and other professionals and parents to target support for the individual child. In conjunction with other assessments, the information from PASS has really helped teachers to adapt their teaching strategies and intervention programmes to raise attainment. Alexandra has worked at Broadclyst Primary School and the Cornerstone Academy Trust for 20 years. She is a specialist leader in education and supports teachers' wider professional development as an SSAT lead practitioner and enhanced teacher programme facilitator. Alexandra is responsible for curriculum development and supports staff in delivering a personalised, creative, broad and balanced curriculum with enrichment opportunities and projects to extend the curriculum offer. She analyses the progress of all children within the Trust, whatever their abilities and interests, setting targets to improve the outcomes of each subject. Alexandra also coordinates the School Direct programme within school alongside the other teacher training programmes that the school supports. So thanks so much, Alexandra, for joining us today.
Hi, good to be here.
Just before you start your presentation, I just wondered if you would answer a question that we've got for you. Okay. If you could summarise in one word what surprised you about the return to school this year.
One word is really difficult for me in any situation. One word, adaptability, I think. Yeah, I'm not allowed to elaborate, am I?
You can, yeah, it'd be great to hear what.
No, just, well, I mean, I'm trying to think of another word for it, but it was just no matter what we planned in the weeks running up to lockdown or running up to the return to school. Everything we thought we planned, we'd pass the plans on to someone, they would look at it, a child would turn up with some need or a parent would ask a question, and so the whole thing was just this constant rolling plan. And we still haven't got there. So no. Everything is just constantly changing.
Yeah, it's been very, very changeable. We appreciate everyone coming on today because I'm sure everyone's had very hard days today. So if I could just stop sharing my screen and I'll pass over to your screen, Alexandra, if you could start sharing.
Okay. Right. Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So yeah, I'm going to be talking to you about sort of our experience of well-being in our trust. So just to give you a sort of a brief overview of our trust, we are based in Devon. We have currently 4 schools, so we're a small trust, and it started off at Broadclyst Primary School, which is where I have worked for the past 20 years, which is a school, a 2-form entry with a nursery. And then 5 years ago, we opened Westclist, which is a few miles down the road, which is a free school. And then we have been working alongside Yo Valley, which is a school in Barnstaple that we have been supporting, which has quite a different sort of demographic and need. And this year we've opened another school in Moncton. So we've got 3 in Exeter and 1 in North Devon with quite a range of needs. We are also a teaching school. We're a science hub, an English hub, a computing hub. We're also an EdTech demonstrator. So from a technology point of view, we were in a sort of quite a good position for lockdown. We were ready. We had the technology there. The children were in a good position as well to be able to access all of that. So what I'm hopefully going to talk to you about is sort of what we did for lockdown, the engagement that we had educationally and the support we were able to give for the welfare of the children, the roles that the teachers had, the support staff, and then any sort of assessments we did, so sort of the academic link to children's welfare, and then the return to school. And as I said right at the start, the fact that our plans are constantly changing. You know, the day started this morning with a review of lunch times, and so any plans that we have for the future. So in March, obviously we had the news that we were sort of waiting for over the 3 or 4 days before, whether the schools were going to be closed. And I think everyone was coming up with plans as to what we could do. We were in the lucky position that we could, the children who were working online were able to just continue with their work at home. We came up with our virtual school, which wasn't that quick. It took quite a few of us to sit down and come up with how we were going to communicate this to parents, how we were going to get children to log into any work. So we came up with these timetables for every year group. I think the good thing about working across the trust means that we did have a larger team who worked together. So all the year 1 teachers would get together and they would come up with their plans for the week. Obviously some of these are still going on. I don't know if you can see on the screen, this is week 10, which is the 6th of November. We've had to close a few bubbles, unfortunately. In fact, we've had to close all bar 1 year group in one of our schools over the past week. So we're having to sort of be very flexible at the moment with all of our planning and communicating this to parents. I think we're sort of here talking about the well-being of the children, but the staff and the parents are anxious. All of a sudden they were told on a Friday that on a Monday the children wouldn't be going to school, they wouldn't be able to go to work. And the teachers had to be teaching at home while looking after their own children. It was a crazy, crazy time. And we wanted to keep the children as stable as we could and maintain all of the routines that we could. As I say, we're in a good position with the technology. The children last summer from age 7 up had one-to-one access to a device. We don't normally let the children take them home, but we very rapidly came up with a contract, spoke to the insurance companies, photographed every single device, and with it, the day before lockdown, parents came in, so COVID secure, obviously, socially distanced, signing out of devices, which meant that if you had, if you were working from home, you didn't have to give your child their device. You could, each child in your family would be able to have their own device, which meant the children would hopefully be able to access all of the work. So we did live lessons. So from 9 o'clock till 9:10, we had registration, which meant that we were able to see every single child. The children had their device, they could log in. We would do a register, which didn't take 10 minutes because we would allow the children to switch on their camera, say hello to their friends. They would still be able to see their friends, because one of the things that we found out during lockdown was that the children really missed the contact with each other, and not just working collaboratively. It was playtimes, which obviously when you're working virtually is quite difficult to manage. So all of these things, where we look at the timetables, we even timetabled break times, because the children needed some free time. It stopped them sort of being disruptive virtually. So we had to refine all of these things for the virtual school. So during the lockdown time, we still continued with all of the ed psych visits, the special needs coordinator visits, the any education welfare visits, everything like that continued. If we didn't have contact with any of the children, it did get to some points where we actually went round to people's houses. And I think because we managed the virtual school well and expected children to attend and register every day, we knew exactly where the children were, we were able to monitor it. And it also meant that because we were doing live lessons all of the time, a member of staff, at least one member of staff, was always available to respond to any queries from parents. So where are we? March. So yeah, so what we did, we handed out all of these services. And so the schooling came with its anxieties straight away, even during lockdown. So those children that were coming in on site, we had the key worker children, who some of those were very anxious because they were coming into school. It wasn't normal. They were with a bubble of children from different year groups. We had staff that were anxious. We had parents who were anxious and sometimes passing on the anxiety because they weren't sure whether their children should actually be going into school. And I think the same thing happened when we had the partial opening in June for year 1 and year 6, because parents weren't sure whether they were actually doing the right thing. And for many parents, it was actually the right thing to get the children back for their well-being rather than necessarily for the education. So the engagement was mixed. And we were conscious that possibly, I keep saying anxiety, but we possibly were causing anxiety by doing too much. So we had to sort of minimize what we were doing. I think lots of people parents might have thought that their schools weren't doing enough. I think to start off with, we were doing too much and we overloaded everybody, staff, parents, children, with what we could do. So all the way through, we've had to sort of reflect and refine what we have been doing. So not focusing too much more on the academic. During the lockdown, we weren't able to use the PASS test, the GL test, which is a shame. And it was one of the things that we discussed at our local advisory board meetings, because the trustees were very keen to find out whether the work that we had been doing with the children outside of school or in virtual school was making the children more or less anxious, more resilient. Were they more comfortable? Were they coping with the lockdown better than they would have if they'd been in a school that wasn't doing quite so much? Were they achieving academically? Did they prefer being at home and working more independently? So we were able to do all of those things, but what we also did was we took the time where we had one teacher delivering a lesson virtually. We had the other staff, the support staff, who were then able to work with smaller groups. We have staff who were then mentors, so all of the children throughout all of the year groups were assigned an adult. So I had a group of 6 children who at least once a week I would make sure that I checked in with them for a video call. So I would email them throughout the week, they would send me bits of work, and then we'd actually sit down and have a meeting. And the theme before lockdown was academic. It was someone who took an interest in the child, who would go through their work on a one-to-one basis and sort of not in a non-judgmental way, but they're not the person in the class. But at this time, it meant that children who were at home were given the opportunity to talk to someone back at school, so someone who was actually there. So I've just got a tiny snippet here of a mentor meeting. So you can see that the teacher dials in to the child who is at home. And although we were saying that the children were working at home, it was really important that we sort of instilled in them that even though they were at home, they were still at school. And so we did set a few ground rules because to start off with, when we were doing work with the children, they weren't switching their cameras on, but it's really important that we could see into their world and they could see into ours. And there were lots of things like you shouldn't be in your pajamas when you go to school at 11 o'clock in the morning, although I'm sure we would all love to do that. And that you don't go to school in your bedroom, you need to be sitting at a desk and all of these things. So part of these mentor meetings was an opportunity for just to start off with a general conversation, but then sort of go into more focused work. And obviously for safeguarding purposes, all of these were recorded.
The easiest way of doing that without changing all of it is just to add some words using emotive language, a bit like where you put sadly, or things like luckily or hopefully, or things like that. Persuade people. They suddenly go, oh, I should be sad about it.
Yeah.
I should be hopeful about this.
Oh yeah, I should be sad.
How they feel. So how you want them to feel, put those words in that paragraph. So get some persuasive emotional words. You know, if you want them to feel happy, tell them they've got to feel happy. Happily, this is happening, or sadly, this is happening. So get some of those words in there. So that's a really easy, quite quick way to do some persuasive writing. Okay, read out the next paragraph.
Okay.
The easiest.
So you can see that just having that little conversation, the children do feel really special. It kept them in touch with the people at home, and it meant that should there be any concerns, we were able to respond to them straight away. And I think that there were concerns that were raised, and it was interesting that when we did sort of have the full return to school, it was some people just sort of thought they could bring their children back to school and the pandemic was over. We also had concerns about the children that were sort of known to us, the vulnerable children, the children that are already working with external agencies and relationships that we've got with parents already. But we also had parents who contacted the school, parents that, you know, we quite surprised that they were contacting us because they'd noticed changes in their children's behaviour. They were typically they were either extremely withdrawn or having aggressive outbursts. And so before we'd even gone back to school in the September, we were supporting parents, having conversations with them, sending help and strategies home. And since then we've sort of prioritised those families, and we run courses such as Timid to Tiger, the Parenting the Anxious Child course. We have regular evening meetings. We have meetings, the children meet up with the school nurse. But so when it did come to the return to school, we were worried about how we were going to identify the needs of the pupils, because everyone had such a different experience during lockdown. I mean, you sort of think amongst your friends, some people absolutely loved it and want to go back to it, and some people hated it. Some of the children didn't go out, and some children we were sort of saying, oh, where are you at virtual school? You know, some of my mentors, oh, I was calling you yesterday afternoon. Oh yes. And they were doing lovely things. They were going out on family walks, or, you know, what did you do yesterday? Oh, I didn't do the science lesson yesterday, I was baking with my parents or something. So it was, you know, there were pros and cons for everyone, but it was good to have those conversations. People were impacted by the lockdown in really different ways. So we sort of preempted the known families who were contacted by the others, and we knew that there would also be lots of issues that were going to be hidden. And I think the other thing is that at the start of the year, without any sort of pandemic, you've got the anxieties of the children, and particularly parents. I keep talking about the children, but I think you know, when you've got your 4-year-old starting school for the first time, or your 2-year-old starting nursery for the first time, it's a very anxious time. But when you've got a child who had just started school, who then left in the April and then is going to a new teacher in the September, you know, there are lots of issues there. So, you know, transition from year to year can be difficult at the best of times, but and the majority of the teacher-pupil relationships in September are new. We also had a number of new staff joining the trust, and we also had a number of new staff who were new to teaching. We had a lot of NQTs, and I think as a leadership team, we've got all of these people asking questions. And going back to what I said at the beginning, everybody is asking questions, and you change your plans and you come up with a new one, and then all of a sudden something else comes along. Or, I mean, the good old government changing the guidance at 4 minutes past midnight. So it has been difficult. So it was difficult for teachers to pick up on the changes and any signs that the children may be giving off to let you know that something isn't quite right. So before we came back to school, we had a training day for all of the school staff, for absolutely everybody, for the bus drivers, senior leaders, the ed psych, and everybody, the lunchtime assistants, class teachers, classroom assistants, everybody was there, and it was to speak to children about, to the staff about the 10 a day, the early help for mental health, strategies that could be put in place to support the children. I think because also, you know, I'm saying it's all of the members of staff. Teaching isn't just in the lessons from 9 o'clock till 10:30, then it's break time. For many children in the classroom is actually the safe time. You know, you're new to a school and you've just been told that the toilet is down the corridor, around the corner, second door on the left. And that can be a very anxious time, and the next thing you find out is you're wetting yourself as you're running down the corridor. You know, children really do become anxious about those sorts of things, and it's very easy for us to worry about planning for a phonics lesson. So it's sort of allowing children to move around. They might have been extremely active. They might not have been told then, you know, to sit down for an hour and a half, and setting the routines, explaining to staff what to do if a child's upset, you know, making sure they've got something to do to keep them busy, and giving really, really clear instructions to the children and visual information, but also having key expectations. It's not, you know, couldn't have all the children coming back to school and there being sort of a free-for-all. You know, we've been in lockdown and, you know, we're just glad to have you back. I mean, we were there to educate, or we are here to educate the children. So it was a lot of information for everybody to take on board at the start of the holiday. And what we decided was the most important thing was for the relationship between the child and the teacher. You know, it's sort of well known that children need a trusted adult, and they've been at home with their parents or whoever their main carer is at home, and all of a sudden they're going out into the world. And they might be very attached to the person. So when they go to school, who is that person going to be? Because the teachers are always incredibly busy. That's what it appears they are. No, that came out wrong. Teachers are always very, very busy. And especially when you're a young child looking and the teacher's busy running from one place to the next. Teachers are always very, very busy. And that's why the mentor meetings that we put in place became very important. And we were saying to the teachers, you've got to become an active listener. So when we do meet with the teachers, we would sort of go through, this is where the past side of things, we would look at the past information. And as I say, sadly, we didn't have any past information for the end of the summer, but we were able to look back to the spring term. And so we sort of gave the children some settling in time and then redid the past tests. And I think, you know, see, I'm talking about our trust and our school's experience. I'm not a mental health expert. And also I think we need to say that PASS isn't a mental health screener. It's not a test to see if there are any mental health issues. You know, it gives us information about when a child's attitude towards their learning alters, you know, and obviously if they have a positive attitude, they're going to attain and achieve well in the curriculum. And if there are any issues, then we need to look at how we can address them and adapt the curriculum. And are any changes due to anxieties caused by the pandemic? It's very easy now to possibly say that it's due to the pandemic. We're in a bit of a sort of strange situation at the moment. So has anything that's happened that's going to affect their performance academically, and, you know, are we prepared for that? This is also an opportunity as well for us to look more in depth at all of the information that we have, and it's not just the past information. I think we need to remember that teachers do know a lot about the families, school staff know a lot about the families, and you sort of gather all of this information. But having not had the children in school for months, you know, 6 weeks is enough time in the summer for things to change in people's lives, but let alone sort of the months that we had. So I think when you don't know the children, it's very difficult for you to pick up on anything that might have any changes. We were lucky to have a few teachers that actually moved up with their classes, and anecdotally there is in 3 of our year groups in one school where the children have moved up. The pass scores are actually better, and we haven't finished all of the progress tests yet, and it will be interesting to see whether the progress tests from the previous year whether that will have an impact. I'm sure it will, because you know, if a child's attitude is well, it's going to increase their attainment. So got students who on the surface appear to be sort of secure and resilient, but they are sometimes the ones that are hiding any concerns, you know, and then that can affect their potential to achieve. So we go through it, and, you know, do they feel that school is a safe place? Have we made it a safe place? Have we made it scarier by putting up signs and making parents wear masks? But, you know, is it welcoming, even though all of these things are going on? Do we want, you know, do we make the children feel that we want them to be there? You know, I think schools now do have a stronger sense of community. You are in your bubbles, which does, in another way, when you've got your adult, that you know, your sort of trusted adult, the people that are working with the same people. It's much easier, I imagine, in a primary school where you have the same team all the time. So yeah, if the children still don't have good feelings about school, you know, what is going on? Is it something that we can change in school? Is it something we can work with the parents? Because, you know, also at the start of the year, is there a not so positive relationship with the teacher, you know, because we know that a breakdown in the relationship between a parent, between a child and the class teacher, that can have an almost sort of instant effect on their attainment. Attendance is an interesting one as well, because you know, do children see it more important to be going to school now, or do they think, oh well, I didn't have to go to school, you know, school doesn't matter, I don't have to work quite as hard as I did before, or I've got to work even harder. I know that my daughter in particular, who's up in she's in year 10 now, has got a fair amount of pressure being put on her by the school, but also by herself, having listened to the news about all the predicted grades. So she is working her socks off at the moment, just in case we go into lockdown again. And what she's doing now will be her GCSE score. So, you know, are we putting too much pressure on the children? Are we putting too much pressure on them? Are the children responding well to what we are doing? Are we reacting well when we find out that they haven't learnt anything? That they haven't been taught something, and you sort of assume when you go into year 5. I was talking to one of the teachers, and she said, oh, I was doing multiplication and I started doing this and they didn't know how to do it. And so I said, well, what did the previous teacher say? And his answer was, well, we would normally go into that in more detail in the summer term. So there are gaps. And so it's all about the communication between the teachers. The progress tests are brilliant. I'll just plug those for you so that the teachers can look at the gaps really quickly and the question level analysis. So that is really, really helpful. And I think that is something that we are going to be doing as a trust over the next few weeks, is really looking deeper, granular level, right down to the individual as to what things are missing, so that we can reflect the curriculum on the children's needs. I I think we, we need to look at what will support the children, what will motivate them to do well in school, because some of them sort of got out of the habit of actually doing some work. Some parents were very, very strict. And good old social media, you get the mixed reactions of parents. You see that they think you're wonderful because you're providing all of this, and then you see parents saying we're exhausted, that they're expecting us to do X, Y, and Z. And so what is the child's work ethic at the moment? Are they struggling with what we're giving them? Will they rise to the challenge, or is it going to absolutely crush them? What we've got to do is also think that if we're not giving them something that they want to do, or providing them with the tools to be able to do something, are they actually going to learn anything? Because we all know that children who don't feel positive don't succeed, and then they don't engage with school. They don't see the work as pointless. They see school as pointless, and then they won't put themselves forward in the classroom. They won't put their hand up. They won't want to bring things in from home, and then no one is having a nice time at school. The children aren't going to be learning anything, and that's when behaviour can be affected. So I'm looking at the clock. We did contemplate looking at taking the progress tests at the end of the summer term, but we decided that we did them for the children in year 6. We didn't do them for any children that are at home, although that was an option. So our plans for the future, as I say, is to look at all of the information that we have got from external agencies, from assessment reports, from conversations with the children, conversations with parents, and looking at how do we motivate all of the children, but particularly the disengaged children. How do we make our curriculum more engaging? Lots of children have found sort of many different interests over lockdown. And can we encourage those? Can we find some sort of hook to encourage them at school, something that makes them feel successful, and then constantly giving them feedback so that they can accept the feedback and then improve? We can help them by the consistency of adults, which, as I said, is supported by bubbling, and not any support or interventions that were put in place at the start of the year, not reducing them suddenly, because then that is a shock and then everything just crumbles again. And children, I'm obviously in primary school, but the children are generally positive about school. Generally they are. There are a few that are anxious. Interestingly, looking at the past, particularly a child who returned who was particularly anxious succeeded at virtual school. He loved it, enjoyed working by himself, wasn't distracted. So that's helped us in the way that we can manage him and support him in the classroom. And children will rise to these challenges. And with all of these meetings, with all of these interventions, we can combine the personal, local knowledge of the child. So how can we make things less positive? So in the mental meetings, find the time, and the fact that children enjoy the fact that someone has spoken to them, looked at their past results, spoken to them about it. It opens a conversation. They feel special, and you become that trusted person. And I think the link to the well-being is the key to the academic success of the child. And I think at the moment we're just starting to come out of this sort of this settling in and now moving into the sort of not redesigning the curriculum, but focusing it on these children that have become disengaged. And I think that is where I am going to stop.
Thanks so much, Alexandra. It's really great to hear your honest experiences so far, through lockdown and afterwards as well. I just wondered, briefly what your advice would be to other schools when they start to look at this term's data from whichever assessments they've used.
Well, keep an open mind. We have been pleasantly surprised by the progress data, and I think, as I say, keep an open mind and have a discussion. Don't just look at the numbers on the page, because there will be some discrepancies, and the conversations that can arise from the numbers or the pretty charts are the important things, and then what you do with that information is far more important.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a few questions which wouldn't mind you answering. Just in terms of the challenges of assessing this term, obviously with children coming back after such a long time out of school, and with all of the COVID restrictions, what kind of challenges have you found with assessing the pupils, and how you've overcome them, really?
As I say, we're in the lucky position that we managed to school the children all of the time throughout lockdown. We had the support of the parents, and we kept the communication going between the two. And we use your complete digital solution. And as I say, being a school that's an EdTech demonstrator school, we have sort of one-to-one devices. I can see that when you haven't got the number of devices, doing the tests like that is more difficult. But I know this isn't a sales pitch. I'm not here to sell your products, but the fact that you can get the information straight away from the progress tests and the spelling and reading tests is brilliant, because you can, if you do have concerns, you can test the child and then have the results straight away. And it's what you do with those. We haven't worried particularly about testing the children. We didn't feel that it was too soon. We have given them time to settle in. One issue we did have was that unfortunately one bubble had to close twice. So although we've been back since September, they've been off school for another month. So that has made it a bit trickier.
Yeah. What were your biggest surprises from assessing the pupils when they came back, compared to what you thought you might see?
There were, I mean, as I say, I haven't looked too greatly in depth. I've looked at year 6 in particular, because I worked with the teacher who had the class last year, and there weren't very many surprises, but it was that the girls had made sort of the expected progress, and sort of we came to the assumption that it was because they wanted to get on with their schoolwork. They liked having a notebook. It's very stereotypical. I possibly shouldn't be saying that. They liked getting on with their work. They liked the independent side of things. So that anecdotally is that the girls seem to do better during virtual school. We haven't had any nasty surprises. Apart from science, actually, I think that was harder to do in a more practical, fun way during homeschooling. So there are quite a few gaps in science, but that's quite a nice thing to have to catch up on. There are areas of the maths curriculum, I think, because we tend not to work in a sort of by rote method. We use project-based learning. Trying to do that, and for parents to be able to deliver that at home can, it was trickier. But so it's, just looking at the gaps. And I think the challenge now is I say, what we're going to do and how we're going to adapt the plans.
Yeah. Final question really was, you mentioned right at the start that things are constantly changing, as they are for all schools. Just based on all the experience you've had so far, would you change anything differently if you had to do the start term again? Oh, gosh. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's really put me on the spot. I don't know, possibly. Oh no, I don't know. Because by making the mistakes, it's what you tell the children all the time. Every time we made a mistake or something need changing, we changed it. And I think that is, you know, and it's quite good for the children to see that didn't work. No, we're going to have to change it. We went straight in. We went straight in and did absolutely, not absolutely everything, but the maximum that we could do to give children the absolute breadth of curriculum, the opportunities, without making it sterile. And we just didn't want to freak them out too much. We were so pleased to have all the children back on site. Yeah.
Well, hats off to you and also to all the other schools out there. It's been a very challenging term. Alexandra, thank you so much for today. It's been really great to hear your experiences. And I really do appreciate it. So we are going to wrap up the webinar now, just to talk through some of the things on the screen that's shown. We've got a quick data guide there's a hyperlink when we send the slides out to everyone that will have a host of resources that you can use to understand past data and other assessments as well. Please do get in touch with us if you want to arrange a training session or a one-to-one data consultation. Again, the links are on the slides here. And consider joining some of our other teacher reflections webinars that are coming up over this month and next. And they're all detailed on our website. Again, the links on the slides that we'll send out. So thank you very much again, Alexandra. Thank you everyone for attending today. Appreciate your time. And we look forward to seeing you on another future webinar.